The purpose of this video is to show you how to size and fit the top and bottom of your tee box. Now, we need two sets of numbers. The first one is the overall dimension of the box. And this box is measuring 10 1/8 by 3 7/8. So we're 10 1/8 by 3 7/8. We also need the internal dimension. So the internal dimension, I'm at 3 1/16 by 9 3/8. Those numbers are all very important. Okay, now that I've got those numbers, I'm going to go ahead and take my box apart. Before I go any further, I need to calculate the top and bottom sizes. So I'm going to take that overall number that we started with, that I started with, 10 by 3 7/8, and add a total of 1/4 of an inch to both the length and the width. So my top will be 7/16 thick, 4 1/8 wide, and 10 1/4 in terms of length. Now I've already sized my top and bottom, and I made it a point that when I was ripping them to width, I ripped a couple of setup pieces as well. Those are going to be very important. They don't have to be the same thickness, but they do need to be the same width. Length doesn't really matter either. Now, what I have to do is figure out the size of the notch that I'm going to be using. So I have that saw set at about 1/8 of an inch away. Here's my test groove. So I'm going to take one of my setup pieces and run a sample. That looks good. What's important here is that this little tongue fits in the groove and that this saw kerf nicely fits over this top lip. Once I have that set, I need to figure out how high to make that groove. Alright? So I'm going to go back and look at my original interior dimensions, and this one is 3 1/16 across on the inside, and I want to take away roughly 1/8 of an inch from that. So I'm wanting this to end up at 2 15/16. I'll show you what I mean by that. So take my setup piece, which is of the same thickness, or the same width. What I want to be 2 15/16 is groove to groove. That's where the 2 15/16 need to be. Now that I have the blade height established, I'm going to take my actual top and bottom, and I'm going to put a mark to signify what will be the inside of the box. The inside of the box. Okay? Because that crayon mark will be what goes against the fence. And by the way, when you're doing this, it is important to have a decent blade in here. I would use the Forest blade for this with a full 1/8 inch kerf, and I would use an insert that's 0 tolerance. We have one at the school that's marked only for 90 degrees. That is the one that I would put in there. So now that we have our blade height set, run all my pieces, all 4 edges, cram against the fence. Now that I have these pieces cut on all 4 sides, we're going to do the shoulder cuts. To do that, I'm going to lower the blade so it is cutting off that lip. It's cutting off that lip without going up higher than the groove that I have in there. Now to make this safe, I need to use an auxiliary fence. So I'm going to clamp this on. Make sure it is low enough that my pieces are sliding on it. And I'm going to set it right flush with the blade, just a little bit. And then I'm going to make a series of cuts and keep working this down. Number I am trying to get this down to from shoulder to shoulder, okay, as I go back to my original numbers. I see my 3/16 apart, and I want to add 5/16 to that. So 3 1/16 plus 5/16 is 3 3/8. So I want from here to here, this number to be 3 3/8. So I'll move it a little bit, and I'm going to work my way down to that. 3 3/8, that's good. That's the number I want. Now that 3 3/8 represents a number where my top will fit in. It'll be in the groove. There'll be a little bit of space left here to allow the top to expand and contract. The next dimension we have to find is this number. And because it's not fitting in a groove like the sides are, we just want it to match our original internal dimension. And in this case, it was 9 3/8. Now I have my 9 3/8. So I'm going to check my fit by putting my box together. It should fit without there being any wiggle room. Without there being any wiggle room. I'm going to fit these pieces one at a time. Put this piece in, and I'm going to slide in my piece. Put this one on, and that looks good. It pulled up tight on both ends. When I look inside, I don't see anything. I don't see any short gaps on the end, and the top still has a little bit of movement side to side. At this point, I'll go ahead and dry fit the other one. But a word of warning, do not put both of them together before the final glue up, because there's a very strong possibility, if your dovetails are tight, that you will never get the thing apart. So in any case, the next step is to sand the interior, put a little bit of finish on it, the bottom and the inside here, and then we'll glue the whole thing up, and there's a separate video for that as well.